Phil, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Jeff. How are you?
Welcome to the podcast. I'm feeling good. Thank you for your time this afternoon. How's the week been treating
Absolutely.
you?
Oh, it's been pretty full on. Nice
Mm.
busy week to keep me on my toes. Oh, we had obviously the two long weekends for the last couple of weekends, so
Mm.
um, yeah, so it was right back into it. But yeah, feeling all right. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this for a little while now. I know for a fact that when we were working together, that we would have conversations like this. Even if it was just from the office to that same cafe. So it was only inevitable to end up having a conversation like this. So yeah, looking forward to it, man.
Yeah,
Whatever's.
perfect. Was there anything specific that you're looking forward to? Because I know I got you to fill in the questionnaire. You had a very interesting topic. I'm not going to reveal it yet. Um, was it more the topic or was it more the anticipation of coming? I'm getting pretty popular, I like believe, maybe.
Yeah, well, I would believe it or not. No, look, nothing in specific. Obviously, I'm just obviously looking forward to seeing you, Jeff. That's what it's all about.
I know. And it's I'm very grateful, Phil, that you're right. It was only a matter of time before you and I sat together. We had a bit of a yarn. We had yarns in the past. I'm not going to repeat the jokes we had back in the day. I reckon they're still pretty funny, but I
Yeah,
think
I'd say
they're a bit dated. But
subjective, probably.
so the existential challenges of growing up, Phil, that we can go in many angles.
Oh, absolutely,
What
yeah.
what are you thinking? Telling me what's it all about?
It was interesting. I think when you first said, "Hey, look, why don't we have a conversation?" and you kind of said, "What do you want to talk about? What's on your mind?" I think one of the things that has been, I guess, prevalent in my life is obviously that transition from the youthful 20s to now more of the mature 20s. I know you'll empathize with this, as I'm sure many people will.
Hmm.
But it was something that was topical because now I'm hitting that sort of late 20s where I've got a bunch of friends that are getting married, having kids, and there's that natural comparison that I think, myself included, but I think a lot of people my age tend to have to put themselves through, and and so I think that was kind of topical. I think it was something that I felt you would probably be able to shed some light on. Given that there's probably only a few years differences in our age, but it was just something that I knew, that you had been through, many other people have gone through, and it's something that I'm currently living, right? So I thought, rather than pick a specific thing, I went, you know what, the biggest thing you can do is by putting the word existential into it, but it's really just about all those challenges and I guess circumstances that you find yourself in as you grow up, and that's true, whether it's teenage years,
Hmm.
20s, 30s, whatever. Um, but it was just something that I thought would be good to talk about. Yeah, so only recently, actually, one of my best friends had his first kid. And that
Wow,
was nice. And it was,
congratulations.
yeah, I'm first. Actually, it's the second. Like I've been privileged to grow up with a really close, tight knit group of friends. The same seven guys for almost 2 decades now. And so it was the first two babies are now within the circle, and obviously we had a first wedding as well. At the beginning of last year, and so a lot of these things are happening.
Yeah.
It's a different part of our lives. We went from shooting hoops and being fools back in the day to now like real world problems.
Yeah.
you
Hey, it's
know,
pretty
so,
cool. It's pretty cool how you have those seven group of mates. Um, you're still together. It's brilliant, eh?
oh man, it's I say this over and over and over again, right? So it's lucky enough to find one, maybe two people that you connect with on a level that lasts or that goes beyond just childhood and those basic overlaps in personality or whatever causes you to be friends when you're younger. And I've been lucky enough to have seven. And it's obviously gone up and gone down, but there's been that core group of friends that we keep in touch. We do as much as we can together, and it was nice that everyone's partners as well. We all got along with each other. A couple of them went to our school, so it's I consider myself blessed when it comes to that, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's been good.
And you mentioned, Phil, comparison. Hitting that age where you're seeing your friends obviously get married, have kids. Well, why do we compare, Phil? Like, I'm not going to lie to you. You know, when I was sort of your age, I'm not saying there's a huge gap, right? But I'm saying we have that. You know, like if John's having a kid and you know Billy's getting married and I'm still sort of single per se, and I can't hold down a couple of dates, I never really have that comparison point in a way. Why do you think that's the case, Phil?
Look, that is a good question. Now, just before I give an answer, by the way, I forgot to say at the beginning of all of this, congratulations. Amidst this topic, it is very important to say that welcoming someone into the family is always a cause for celebration.
When the time, if and when the time comes, Phil, and you become a dad, it's you don't know until you do it, and it's the greatest reward. It is.
Yeah.
It's I can't describe it. It's an amazing feeling. I'm thankful that my son looks like me. I shared a photo with my cousin. She's 10 years older than me, and she played a huge part of my life when I was growing up. Yeah. So she saw me sort of, you know, become a baby and grow up and, you know, get a bit older. And I sent her a photo of my son, and she goes, "You know what? I'm looking at you when you were the same age."
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny to have a mini-me walking around. He has a lovely sense of humor. He's a smart ass, and he's only 4.5 years old.
Exactly like you then.
No, I appreciate it, Phil. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, you know, getting back to your circle of friends, inevitably when you get a bit older, I need to go to you, Phil. We're chatting at 5 p.m. today. You make time, I make time. And but when I'm with you, I'm with you.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I hear that. But look, let me answer that question that you had about why we compare. And I've tried to spend some time thinking about this just to, I don't know, try and come up with an answer that I think makes sense.
I'm sure you can.
And perhaps validate, you know, the reasons we do it. And I think it actually, interestingly, it has some parallels to growing up, I find, in a ethnic family or in a family that I think essentially has a blueprint for how you should live your life, right? So, you know, growing up in an Indian family, there's always that, you know, that I won't even say expectation, but let's go with that word, that this is how you should live your life, right? You know, you grow up in a small community of other Indians, ideally. You shared similar values, similar traits. You know, you go through high school, you graduate, you get a degree, you graduate, you get a job, you know, you work, you get married. And so there's this like timeline that I suppose we're meant to follow. Now, obviously, as a new generation, we have the luxury, and particularly as a new generation in a first world country, in a more predominantly Western society, we've obviously got the freedom, the luxury to be a bit more liberal with our thought. We're able to go a little bit wider than what perhaps our parents, grandparents could have done, which is where they would have gotten their idea of a blueprint. But I think as a result, we form these ideas of this is what we should be doing at any given time. And for the most part, that's helpful. It's good. It's a guiding light for us to live our lives by. But then what you end up finding yourself doing is this comparison, which is, well, when someone else does it first, and let's say we're the same age, well, am I falling short? Like, am I doing something wrong? You know, and I would imagine that they may think the same, but the difference is that they're further along that, you know, that blueprint that we're talking about. And so I think that's kind of where it starts. And then it starts to manifest itself in other areas of your life. You know, it might not just be in your, you know, let's say in your personal life. It could be in other areas. Well, someone's a bit more of a senior manager than I am, and we're the same age. Am I falling short? Am I doing something wrong? You know, like it's all these little things. And I think it's only when, and I would probably go out on a limb and say that you've probably had this realization as well with your experiences. I know I've been lucky enough to have had this experience super early on in my life, is that when you get to a point and you where you're either encouraged or directed, or sometimes even just your hand is forced to think about what's important, to think about those deeper questions about how you should be conducting yourself, how you should be living your life, you start to realize what's truly important, and what you should be focusing your time and effort on. And I think that allows you to break away from this comparison and this expectation that's always been set, and that you're trying to sort of chase. And so I think that's probably been my outlet. I don't know. What do you think? So you're obviously, you've had plenty more experiences in this kind of a field, so what do you think would be the reason why we compare ourselves to each other? Doesn't necessarily need to be personal, but
I think your blueprint theory, Phil, bang on the money.
Should I trademark that? I might trademark that.
I think you should. Yeah, I think just keep in mind that I'm recording this. I own the rights, so I'm not too sure how that's going to work.
Yeah, cool. All right, I might blueprint it just in case it becomes a thing.
I think you're bang on the money. It's very much. I look at the blueprint theory that you've proposed. I think you're bang on the money. But if I dig a bit deeper and peel the layer back a bit more, I think it's innately in us that we always want what we can't have. And I think that sort of stems from that.
What do you mean by that? So when you say some things that we can't have, so what is it, do you think, right now that you would want, but you know that you can't have?
I'm in a very happy place now, Phil. I don't need anything. I don't want anything.
Yeah.
What I need, I have. What I want is very much my family now, because like what you said, you really realize, whether it's through COVID or whether it's through my illness that I shared with you back in the past, there's prioritization in life, and there's an understanding that you shouldn't really take life too seriously at the same time.
Yeah.
But getting back to your question on the whole comparison thing, I think you're pretty much bang on the money on the whole blueprint theory. We all go through life, trying to hit those certain hurdles, jump through certain hoops, and whether they are laid out for us or whether it's planned or whatnot, it's very much a blueprint of how life should be. And if you go into life and you try to break away from it, I'm sure you would agree that there are times where people may look down upon you or sort of think you're crazy.
Oh, absolutely.
By
Absolutely.
going and veering into a different path. I think for me, Phil, how I deal with the comparison, just getting back to your question about where it comes from, I think you're pretty much spot on the blueprint theory. How I deal with it is that by speaking with so many people, whether it be via this podcast and going through my experiences, you sort of realize that everyone literally goes through their own journey. So you really can't compare apples with apples, because I'm going this way, Phil, you're that way, your mate's going up, someone's going sideways. You really can't compare. And then you ask yourself, why are you comparing when life is so different for people? So getting back to your theory, I think, unfortunately, when we do have that preconceived notion of how one should live, we inevitably get anchored back to how we should live when we know deep down that I don't think I want to go down that path, but you might get looked down upon, be frowned upon. So I think it takes a lot of courage to go down a different path.
Definitely. And I think one of the really, I'd say one of the things that I probably did a little bit wrong was when that first idea came about in my mind. Obviously, it's something that becomes relevant in the home. Obviously, I had these kinds of discussions with my parents, with my friends, grandparents, and there are very differing, there's a variety of responses that you get to that. And I think whilst initially I kind of went, well, I don't think it's right this blueprint or this idea is placed on me and I'm supposed to live my life this way, because you get that from your parents, you get that from the people that are looking out for you, and they only know the world that they grew up in. They know the world or they see the world in a certain way, and they give you the guidance to the best of their knowledge. And I think the world that we're in is drastically different to the world that they grew in, and not just practically, not just even from a technology standpoint, but even from your fundamental moral values, from the things that, let's say, are more religious, because I would say more people were probably more religious over the last few decades than they have been in the most recent ones. There's big differences, and so that blueprint that may have worked a little while ago may not necessarily work now. And so I think that's something that I tackled a few times, and I think similar to you, I've found a pretty nice wavelength to live on. I find myself being generally pretty stress-free. I find myself being quite content, quite happy with the decisions that I've made and the direction that I've gone, both personally and professionally. So when these types of topics come up and these types of challenges come up, I actually don't think I've got such a I don't feel like it's a massive burden to think about it and figure it out and move on. It doesn't take up a lot of headspace, because I think I'm generally pretty happy with where things are at.
What caused that, Phil? I think when we were working together, Phil, I think you always had that very optimistic view on life. Was there a specific event or catalyst that made you question that blueprint in a positive way?
Question it in a positive way.
Because what you're sharing with me is that you've acknowledged that there is a blueprint of life that has probably been passed down by your parents, rightly or wrongly. And you've come to the realization that, hey, maybe this blueprint is not really important to me, and I can live a life that is more me, which is fantastic to hear, Phil, right?
Yeah.
How did you get to that?
Yeah. Look, how I got to that, I don't think I could tell you. It's kind of like the intricacies of every little decision, every experience, every micro experience that I've had, every single day up until now. But I think it might be slightly different to that last description of it. I don't think it's a matter of saying that the blueprint, and I think that blueprint term, I think loosely refers to things like, well, what's my purpose? What do I want to do? What makes me happy? The meaning of life. I think there was an episode you had a little while ago around the meaning of life, which I thought was a really nice topic to be able to openly talk about with. But I think that's what blueprint sort of entails. It's all of these things that end up giving you some direction in how to operate, how to live, and I think it slightly varies from saying that in its entirety it's not for me. I think what it's more about is taking those guiding principles and adapting it to what you think is appropriate, all things considered, and in the context to which you live. So I'll give you an example. So when we talk about some of those baseline moral values that religion gives. Now, my parents my family are quite religious, I would say, and they like to bring us up around the church, around fellow Christians, in a church community, and it was nice. And now growing up, obviously, you start to spend less time thinking about those things and doing your own thing. But what I realized was, whilst I might not be as serious about religion, which was a part of that blueprint that I think they wanted me to grow up in, what I realized was there was actually a lot of good things that I could take away from being in a community like that, which was those baseline moral values. Be kind to each other, love each other, be nice to each other. A lot of those things, they sort of transcend religion. It's just a good attribute to have.
Foundational, somewhat.
Absolutely. And so what I realized was, whilst they might have said, look, we always want you to go to church, I might have said, all right, well, look, that might not be fully for me, but here are the things. And to this day, I still hold in a high regard. These are the things that I really take from what initially was considered to be what I should do, now to, well, I'll take what I think will really help me, but there'll be other things that I want prioritize or focus on. So I think it's really just about adapting those guiding principles to the context of the world that you live in. And why that's important is because it's more than likely, and I'll bet you've already done it, or at least have already thought about it, but it's something you're probably going to pass on to your kids. Well, this is how I interpret my world, right? And now I'm going to share that with you. And it's up to you whether you see the same thing, whether you see it differently. Obviously, that's I guess part of the journey. But I think that's probably something I'll end up doing, right? Taking all the things that I've learned and experienced, sharing that, passing that on to my kids one day, and they'll do what they will with it.
I sort of realized when you're a parent now, Phil, is that everything you do is essentially becoming part of your son or daughter's blueprint, because he or she doesn't know any better. So he would look at you. Now obviously my daughter's only 6 weeks old, so probably not yet, but my son's 4.5. He sees everything I do. He remembers everything. So it's a good reminder to always set a good example, more in a sense of what I do, not what I say.
You know,
the whole...
For now, right? Then eventually it'll start becoming what you say.
well, here's the thing, right? Like, you know how people every day, hey, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that, right? But then physically they do that. So it's a bit of an oxymoron when your son might see you go, hey, don't eat ice cream, but then here you are, for example, hiding behind the fridge, going, You make a good point, and you are building that blueprint for him. And you're right, when he gets to a certain age, I do hope that I give him enough of a foundation. I essentially want to help him develop his tree trunk for analogy's sakes. So I want to make sure I give him that core, whether it's those foundational beliefs of just being nice to people, treating people with respect, embracing diversity of thought, which is a big part of this podcast. You have that sort of trunk. And then when you grow up, you're going to be adding branches left, right, and center, right?
Yeah.
You do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So very much look forward to that.
Yeah. And interestingly, I think it's nice that we have the luxury to take our time and think about that. Like I wholeheartedly get that, particularly for a lot of families that perhaps have migrated from countries that didn't really allow them to take the time to think about how they want to live their life. It was all about, I need to make something of myself. I need to make something for my family. And so I think whilst we go about our lives doing all this, it's always important to not forget or not pay enough mind or gratitude to, I always say this, gratitude to my parents for obviously doing the things that they did in order for me to have the luxury of thinking a bit more liberally or thinking a little bit more freely with how I want to operate, what I want to do with my life. And so, they'll always, friends and family will always be saying things to point you in the right direction to the best of their knowledge. Otherwise they wouldn't be considered friends or family. But yeah, I think it's I think it's just about taking what you can from what you're given and molding that into the right shape and running with it, seeing what works for you, what doesn't. And that's all part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
And then when you're on your deathbed, you can say, great, it worked out, or maybe it didn't, who knows? But
hey, as long as you gave it a crack, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's all it's about, right? That's actually, I had a bit of a reflection after listening to a couple of the episodes that you'd filmed earlier, and one of the topics that I thought, which is kind of linked to that outcome, is around the fact that you gave it a crack, and that in itself should be able to give someone purpose or give someone meaning in their own lives. Like I think that's the ambition to be trying, to be aiming for some forward-facing direction. Like all of those things should give someone purpose. It's just one of those things that sadly not everyone has the right people around or have the right people around them to give them that direction or help them through times where they may not think that they have a meaning or a purpose. But I find that at the very least, you've always got that underlying, or you should always have that underlying drive of do more, try more, continue along the journey of life in some shape or form. Progress of all kinds, I suppose, should be an ambition.
Had a good recommendation from a friend yesterday. Just getting back on a whole, having a good support network. It's great to have people go, hey, Phil, you can do it. Go for it. Have a crack. But then when you go to your friend, I'm just not confident. I don't think I can do it. I worry about X, Y, Z. But then as a friend, you might be go, hey, no, don't worry about it, Phil. Ignore your self-doubt. But what was interesting about this little segment of a podcast my friend sent me is that when you have someone, a close friend who basically is too gung-ho in being motivational, he or she forgets that Phil, for example, just wants to be heard. Maybe Phil is actually suffering from something that just wants you to be heard. Phil has a legitimate reason why he can't do X, Y, Z. So, sorry to loop it back to your 7 friends, but I'm curious also, you got me thinking, buddy, right, about the dynamics between your 7 friends, the motivations behind them. Like I have a friend, Phil, who literally goes through every single one of my podcasts. He listens to them from beginning to end.
That's a good friend. That's a good friend.
He's married. He has a business.
Yeah.
He has 3 young kids. Yet he always makes the time to devote a couple of hours of his week to listen to it, to get on WhatsApp and just blast me with feedback.
That's a good friend.
It's a good friend. So I'm curious
I'm just going to say this now, that to your friend that is listening to this in the future, you're a great friend. You're a great friend.
Fantastic. I give him a special shout out. He actually bought me a pair of headphones and a condenser microphone. He didn't know that I actually have all this ready to go, and he just bought me another set. And I said, wow, that's brilliant. But what you're doing for me in terms of devoting 2-3 hours a week for me to give me feedback is the ultimate gift. So we have a strong dynamic there, and I'd be lying to you, Phil, if I'd have that group of 7 friends with me. So getting back to the whole motivational piece of really understanding Phil, how does that friend dynamic work? We've talked about life, the meaning of it, giving them a crack. The closeness is pretty powerful, with your 7 friends, or?
Oh, absolutely. So it kind of started, there's a couple of us one of the guys is from kindergarten, and over the years, a few of us went to primary school together, a few of us met in high school, and we kind of all consolidated post high school, and we've all been, that close-knit circle. It also was really useful, or I should say helpful, that we all lived in the same suburbs. So obviously we were all the 2119, not that it just sounds right when you say it like that. But look, it was clear that, these were the kinds of friends that you want to have around them. Like, you go through the same teething issues and everyone growing up, and, you get into your fights and arguments and what have you. But we're kind of now at a stage where I think those deeper rooted similarities, like one day we all want to have families, one day, we all want to have a stable career. We all want to live near each other and celebrate the highs and be there for each other in the lows. I think that all exists for everyone. But there is one other thing, and this is kind of tied back to, you were saying that, there's a scenario where friends might be a bit gung-ho and they'll just, they'll tell you what you want to hear. I think as friends, you have a responsibility to not just say things for the sake of saying them. You have a responsibility to give them real feedback, right? So hit them with a reality check, but also, to your point, to listen, right? So, and I'm slowly learning that. I've had a few friends around me, and kind of go through these things that, whilst me, I feel I just can't empathize because I can't understand what they're going through. And so I realized that maybe it is just my position to listen, to be there as a shoulder to lean on, and at the very least present yourself as an option for them to lean on. And I think that I'd like to think that that's helped, and that, it has
Being
been
honest.
there.
You're being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But also giving a reality check, right? And this is something that I find is a test of true friendship. Like, if you can't be honest with someone, and tell them truthfully, what needs to be said, is that really a good friendship? Like, there's a line. Obviously, there are things you shouldn't say, things you should say. I get that. But if it's in the interest of helping someone, right? Like, if one of your friends is just clearly doing something wrong, you go, well, look, love the enthusiasm, but this is not right. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. And I can't give you an example, but I feel like that principle.
I can think of many in my mind.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a funny kind of story around this, which was, so we had a scenario where a couple of friends sort of ended up. It was during the COVID lockdown. There was a couple of friends that that not everyone was fully aware of their perception of how to deal with the pandemic and all of that, and so as a result they passed on COVID, and there was this whole uproar with a few of us saying, well, would we have done the same? What would we say now that we know that they did that kind of thing. And so I said, all right, look, let me show you how you deal with this. And so we went out for dinner. My girlfriend and I, we went out for dinner with a few of my friends. I said to the guys, I was like, if one of us gave anyone else COVID in this group, would anyone not say anything, or would you just say, you're an idiot, you should have stayed at home and not said anything? And they were like, they would probably never hear the end of it if one of those guys did that. Not because of any, hurtful intent, but it's just like, come on, right? You're sick, don't pass it on. And we won't go down that conversation of, opinions and whatever on what we've gone through the last 2 years. But I just thought it was funny. It's that brutal honesty that I think comes with it's one of those responsibilities I find that you should that you hold or you have when you've got those kinds of friends. And I can tell you this for certainty. I've got a number of friends that are happy to be brutally honest, and that that helps sometimes.
And do you find sometimes, Phil, that when you receive something that's brutally honest, do you, like, I'll tell you straight away, sometimes when I get brutally honest feedback, I have to remind myself that this is feedback, slow it down, it's constructive. I don't know you, but sometimes even I sometimes get into a automatic reaction.
Oh, I do it all the time. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to attribute it to something like ego, because I think I've worked pretty hard to try and remove that kind of remove that from my life. I've tried to consciously look at that. But I kind of do attribute it to the fact that if I've got some sort of preconceived notion about what the intention is here, then it immediately gets me if I hear something that I don't like. But you get to the bottom of that. You hear it, you process it, and then you figure out, is it going to help? Is it not? Was it meant to be helpful? I don't know. But yeah, look, I tend to have the same kind of reaction.
Yeah. But the beauty of it all is that if I go to you, Phil, hey, Phil, great job, great clothes, you're looking great, good deal, pat, 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 right? Yeah, you're not going to really learn anything. Yeah. You're not going to really learn anything. But if I go to you, hey, Phil, X, Y, Z, that sucks because of 1, 2, 3, and this is what I'm sharing with you, you're probably going to go, screw you, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's kind of like I've heard this a few times in really different ways, but it's kind of like the idea that telling your kid that you can do absolutely anything that you want, right? Like, as in, I love the ambition. It's a beautiful thing to say. But then you get hit with a reality check at some point, and you're like, well, no, I probably can't be the fastest man in the world. No matter how hard I train, no matter how hard I try. So again, it's a reality check, right? So as family or as friends, you probably want to give that honesty. Now, I don't think that's
a certain age.
At a certain age, yeah, definitely not now. You feed your kids with as much love as you can now. But but to the point that we were talking about before, perhaps one of the elements you include in the blueprint that you end up designing is a platform to decide, to choose, to learn and figure out what you want, rather than saying this is it. Maybe it's an open-ended thing where it's kind of like one of those you know those games where you make the decision and you go to a certain page. So rather than actually, this is a great analogy. Rather than reading a book from cover to cover, maybe it's one of those things where it's like when you read a page, it says, well, if you chose this, go to this page. And if you chose this, go to this page.
I think there was a book like that back in the day, right?
You know, I'm visualizing it. It's like a picture book of some sort.
No, you're right. I remember there is, but it was very binary.
Yeah.
They should have make it harder where it's like 5 choices.
Yeah.
Because life is.
I agree. Yeah.
I think life is binary in terms of yes and no, but the optionality to get to the binary decision is endless.
Yeah. No, I agree. Actually, you know where they did that? They did that on Boulder Dash for Black Mirror. So it was one of the I think it was the most recent season of Black Mirror. I think it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was meant to be like the first interactive or episode or something. And so you're meant to like you watch a scene and then you decide, and then it will jump to the scene that's corresponding to your selection.
Video games. Video games that have the story mode where you can pick the scenario, and that's where I got it from. That's where I remember it from.
Yeah. So it's maybe it's like that, you know. Maybe it's not so much about saying this is how this is not how you play the game, but here are your options. You decide, and then you play out whatever comes of that. Maybe that's the way that it's meant to.
I'll give you a funny story. You know, I was playing. I got my son an air hockey table. It's like a mini one, right? So naturally, when you get to 9, you win, right? So I'm trying to teach my son how to count. So using air hockey table, right? Now this is pretty funny about blueprint for life, teaching things, but I think a lot of things are quite innate. So getting back to the example of the air hockey table and teaching my son how to count, naturally you got to let him win because he doesn't like losing. So he was on 7, right? You need to get to 9 to win, right? So I go to my son, what's 7 plus 2? His answer wasn't 9.
Oh, no.
You know what his answer was? Winning.
Okay.
7 plus 2 is equal to winning.
I don't hate that answer. That's the kind of trash talk I'd probably start with.
I'm so proud of my son for the early stages of trash talking.
Yeah. No, it's true. You bet. How old did you say he was?
He's 4.5.
If he's 4.5 and he's laying out, lines like that, you better wait. He hits maybe 6 or 7, he'll be cussing you out in no time.
And when he gets to 9, he's doing loops around the air hockey table.
Yeah.
Going, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
No, go on.
No, it's just funny how when you talk about the blueprint of life, it we can take this off to many branches. It then brings me to the concept of nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
Now, in that case with my son, I'm teaching you 7 plus 2. 7 plus 2 equals to 9. It does not equal to winning. But he made that connection straight away. Yeah.
No, it's good. I like it. I feel like he and I will be a great team if we ever teamed up on some air hockey or maybe even futsal like we used to. No, not futsal. What was the game? It was foosball. That's the one.
I think that table was collapsed, by the way, Phil. So I think
we played that endlessly.
No, whilst we were working, whilst we were working hard.
Yeah. Look. Yes. For the record, yes, we were working hard. Yeah. No, look. It's interesting though because you really do have that responsibility from a young age. Like I don't know, how do you feel about this newfound responsibility of not just having 2 extra lives to worry about, but the responsibility of maybe getting it right? Like how do you think about that, right? Like it is a big responsibility. So where's your mind at? Like, do you feel comfortable with it all? Do you feel on edge that you might get something right, might get something wrong? Like, where's your head at with all of that?
I'm very thankful, Phil, that during COVID, just before COVID hit, my son was probably maybe just 2.5, 3 years old, still very young.
Mm.
And my childcare was recommending some course called Circle Security.
Yeah.
Now, it was a commitment of 10 weeks, a 2-hour in-person session per week on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good, worthwhile investment. I am curious. I wanted to learn, right? But long story short, fantastic course. But there was one single quote from the instructor that really resonated with me. And I think it's a great sort of line to utilize, whether you're a parent, whether you're single, whether you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, right? We sometimes place too much of a high bar on whatever we do, whether we want to succeed at work, whether we want to be part of a political campaign, where we want to succeed, whether we want to be the best player who scores 50 plus points in a basketball game. And the instructor goes to us, there's no such thing as right or wrong when it comes to parenting. You just need to be good enough.
Mm.
You just need to be good enough as a parent. So for me, Phil, I aim for good enough. I know I'm not perfect. I know that when he comes home at about 4:30, 5 o'clock after preschool, my mind is sometimes not there.
Mm.
And 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, I get it right. 3 out of 10, I get it wrong. But I don't need to be perfect, Phil.
Yeah.
I aim for good enough.
Yeah.
That just takes it all off.
Yeah. I'll say 7 out of 10. I don't know. In Asian standards, even in Indian standards, I don't know, 7 out of 10.
Hey, you're right. It's not good enough, right?
Yeah. But see, that actually is a perfect sort of connection back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the expectation or the blueprint of what you should be doing.
You should be 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, exactly. You know, it's funny because that's probably where even all the stereotypes and the jokes end up coming from, right? Because you end up going, well, you aim for perfection, and anything shy of that is failure. Like there's a number of times I've heard this joke where it's always about like you're either a doctor, an engineer, or a failure, right? And like I love it, and I think it's hilarious. But I think that's where it starts from, is that there is this underlying desire, or not a desire, underlying expectation for perfection, which isn't necessarily. I don't think it's the right way to go. Maybe it was. In the past, but I feel like now in a world where we have so much on offer, where we have so many different paths we can take, perfection isn't what you should chase. It should be something else. I think it should be contentment or satisfaction or general happiness, you know, because I think because exactly, giving it a crack, you know. I think this, maybe that's not the right choice of words, but the generation that we have, the current state of play, people around now are far more woken up to the reality of life. You know, they're far more woken up to the reality of what we do in our day-to-day lives. Like work was always that really important thing that we had to do, and now you go, well, but is it? Like I'm going to my job every day and I'm making money so that someone else can make more, you know, and you start to think about those existential questions as slightly a little bit more of a philosophical matter than you may have previously. And I think more people are doing that now. More people are thinking about things that way. And so as a result, yeah, maybe they aren't chasing perfection, because you have to give up the most valuable resource, which is time, to chase the possibility of perfection. You can't guarantee it, right? So you end up having to go, all right, well, I can take the risk of trying to be the greatest in the world at whatever I do, but it's not guaranteed. And if I fail, I've given up many years of my life that I could have otherwise done something a little bit more relaxing and lived a far more enjoyable life than perhaps an intense life. And I think I know that I'm pretty much in that position now, where I just said, sure, I could continue working, you know, I can continue chasing the dream of you know, higher, more senior jobs and bigger salaries and all of that. But the trade-off is that I give up time spent with friends and family doing enjoyable things, and that's not something you can get back. And I'm lucky because I think I kind of got that from my parents. I kind of got that from my friends around me. And like I was saying, it's that circle around me that I think really helped get me to that position. And so as a result, I went down the path of, no, I'm not that comfortable with the risk. I'm not willing to spend my entire life doing something like that. So I thought, I'll find a balance with, a good job with a good company that cares about you. I'll find a balance with, ideally, a partner one day. And obviously my girlfriend came along, and so all of these things seem to be working out really nicely, which kind of loops back to that very first thing that I said, or one of the first things I said, is I find myself in a similar boat as to you, in the sense that I'm happy, I'm comfortable, I'm content, which I think is a far greater thing to chase than perfection, I suppose.
And I'm sure you realize that tomorrow could be completely different.
Absolutely. And you cannot take today for granted. It's like you have to, I'd say there's an element of like, you have to consciously work towards maintaining what you have. But I think it's easier to come by the motivation to maintain something you thoroughly enjoy and you gives you a good feeling than it is to, continue a life of high stress, high intensity. And some people are made out to do that. Honestly, I've seen some people that are just built to absolutely grind away at whatever they're doing, and all power to them, right? If it gives them purpose, if it gives them that sense of satisfaction. Exactly. And I think deep down, a lot of people believe that, but at the outset, they feel that that's the right thing to do because you're generally driven by ambition, blind ambition and motivation early days. But when you take the time,
you don't also know when you're younger, you don't really know.
True. Yeah.
You need that blueprint.
Yeah.
To provide the foundation, like you said, Phil.
Well, exactly right. And so then it's a matter of starting to ask yourself the questions, thinking about, what it is that you want to do, figuring it out, using that guidance you've gotten from the blueprint early days, and then making decisions as to where you want to go. And so, and that honestly, it links back perfectly to the topic of, existential problems of growing up, because that's just one of them. It's like, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to focus my energy?
Is it a problem?
Problem probably wasn't the right word. I probably
you said challenge. Sorry, you said challenge. My bad.
Did I say challenges? I think that's probably more appropriate than problems. Yeah.
Challenge.
So maybe
it is a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. It's not gonna come easy, but I'd say challenges is probably the right word.
I always realized, if you asked me maybe 5-10 years ago, running your own race, resonated with me, right?
Yeah.
As I kick on in the years, I realized that's actually not the greatest of sort of phrases. Why do you need to run? Why does it have to be a race? So therefore,
yeah, sure, yeah.
So therefore,
only if you take those two words at face value, I think is it a metaphor? I think it's a metaphor.
Hey,
Sorry.
Words are very powerful, right? And if you're growing up, running your own race is the literal translation is literally you're running your own race.
Yeah, the assumption is that everyone is running and everyone's in a race to get to the finish line.
And it's a race. What does that mean, buddy?
Well, someone has to win, someone has to lose.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Maybe we got to find a better like.
How about? I thought about this actually.
Go.
You just on your own journey. That's it. I know it's not as catchy as running your own race, but it doesn't need to be catchy. You're just on your own journey, Phil.
How about walking your own path?
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to nitpick. Some people don't want to walk. They literally just want to sit on their ass all day long. Who am I to tell you what you can and can't do?
I'm just saying. Yeah, I honestly, I'm just trying to think of like something that would make sense. I think, yeah.
So I'm just thinking, you're just on your own journey. That's it. Knock yourself out. If you're one of those grinders who can work 9 to 12 every single day, 7 days a week, and you're making gazillions and bazillions of dollars, good on you.
Yeah.
If it's on
Yeah.
your terms and you're happy to do it, brilliant.
Mm.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
true.
And yeah, it's just it only occurred to me recently about the whole running your own race thing, which I thought is very an old, not old school, but I thought there was a better way to present this sort of line
Yeah. Yeah.
about just
No,
being
I
on your own
agree.
journey. And that
This
comes
is
back
why,
to the whole
yeah.
comparison thing.
Well, so this is why I'll never succeed in marketing, because catchphrases like that are far beyond me. I run with what makes sense and then try and interpret it in my own way.
I think you'd be pretty good. I was actually pretty good back in the day when I was younger about coming up with slogans. I still remember in year 6, we had a sort of a drama class where we'll try to sell a favorite product, and we would get recorded with one of those old school gigantic video cameras. And I was in a group, I remember very clearly, and my best friend was there.
Yeah.
And we decided to market a drink called, it was some sort of ice drink. So the whole phrase was golden ice to complete your life.
Golden ice to complete your life. That might be one of the most primary school Jeff Chan lines ever. That's great.
That's great, eh? I was like, wow, that's a, yes, it's just funny, Phil.
Do you remember anything or any of those projects that you did back in the day? Because as soon as you said that, the first thing that came to mind was like the first time I had to make like a product and we had to like present it at a little, I guess, what do you call them? Not festivals, but a little
presentation thingy.
Presentation thing in front of everyone. And I made I'm not even kidding, I put a soccer ball in a plastic bag and I tied a bunch of like strings and rubber bands to the plastic bag and then tied that to my ankle so you could like kick it and it would come back to you. That was my idea.
That was a $1 billion idea right there, Phil.
Yeah, honestly, I decided not to go public with that company and that idea. Just I thought I'd let the billionaires stay rich. I was happy to live my life. That's the only reason why. But I just remember those kinds of like little projects that make you be a bit more creative. Yeah, absolutely. Did you have something like that? Like, I suppose this golden ice was one of them.
Well, there's another time where I was in year 1, and obviously in primary school you migrate best friends sometimes, and it's okay. Yeah. It is what it is. Yeah. So my other best friend in year 1, we were in a sand pit, and we thought, wouldn't it be pretty cool if we created a trap within the sand pit? So if a kid is running across, so we basically created 2 mounds. There was one here and one here. Just imagine 2 mounds. And we will connect the mound with basically grass. Now, grass, right? So it's not what you call a strong material that if someone were to walk across it, they would stack it.
Right. So, okay. All right. Here we go.
So we're in a sand pit. We would set up the trap. We would sit in the corner, and we just sort of look there. Just wait for someone to just put their left foot onto this piece of grass and stack it. We were there for 2 hours. It was like it was like one of those days where your parents would just drop you off.
Yeah.
I don't know, school holidays. So the whole day just playing, right? We sit there for 2 hours just waiting for someone to just walk across it and stack it. Nothing happened, Phil.
No, I'm devastated. I was hoping that would finish in like someone tripped over and now he's my best friend.
Someone would have tripped over if I had like actual metal wire connected between 2 wooden posts, so to actually create some tension.
Yeah.
I'm
kind of glad you went with the sand and grass, because I feel like a metal wire your life might have taken a turn for the worst if that had been successful.
Yeah, and just getting back to you, like, I'm just finding a lot of similarities of getting back to your whole blueprint concept where we first talked about it, Phil. I'm sure you heard of people say when they get to a certain age in life, they would just wish to go back to being a kid.
Yeah, I haven't spent enough time thinking about what my opinion is on that.
No worries, no fear. If you make an ass out of yourself, just get back up. Think about it.
Yeah, well, I would say that as a natural instinct is something that I envy, right? So I love the fact that a kid can make a mistake, not care, correct themselves, and then move on, right? And actually, I was reading about this when I was thinking about, not when I was thinking about, well, I say thinking about it partly because I was just too lazy to ever do it. But when I thought about learning a language, one of the blockers or the barriers that I was reading about is that adults have that fear of failure, fear of mistakes. And that's why it's marginally more difficult to learn a language when you're older, because when you're a kid, you give it your best shot. If you mess up, you correct yourself and you go ahead. You don't care what people think about you. You don't care about any of that. And I feel like that kind of like blind confidence. Is it confidence? I don't know where it comes from. Maybe it's resilience.
You don't. I think when you're growing up, when you're younger, you don't really get reprimanded when you fail. But when you get older, when you failed at tests and you get 38 out of 50 when you needed to get 40, 38 means you don't pass, which means you failed.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, maybe it's resilience that stems from obliviousness or something like that. Early days, when you're a kid, and that kind of that's where you get your confidence from. Now, granted, I wish I probably put in a bit more effort trying to learn a language. You speak more than one language, don't you? Yeah. What do you speak?
I speak Cantonese. Is obviously English. And there was a time where I tried to learn Mandarin, but that went downhill because my wife actually got a job offer to work in Shanghai. But logistically, it was very difficult given my medical condition.
Yeah.
But why not, right? Give it a go,
Yeah.
right? As a side point, I contacted someone who worked in Disney in Shanghai who had the same health condition as I did. He would help me out in terms of which hospital to go for, how to purchase medications and whatnot, right? So it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
So I went hard on the language books. And you're right about the whole failure thing. But for me, I never really had that fear of failure. I couldn't care less.
I
don't care.
I agree. Yeah.
So there was a time where I picked up the language pretty well, but as whatever you call it, the job got reneged. She actually got a better role in Sydney. So be it, right? But yeah, I only speak Cantonese, but that's more of a native tongue that my parents have. Mandarin is probably something that I actually went on myself. And lastly, I know Japanese. Believe it or not.
Do you really? I don't know that about you.
Sorry?
That's great. I didn't know that about you. That's one thing that I thought you.
We didn't have any Japanese organizations who needed to purchase our software, Phil.
Yeah. Okay. That is how committed you were at a sales role, at any of your roles. You learned a language to sell software? No.
Oh, no. I learned Japanese during high school. I basically kicked ass, Phil. I was a machine, right? I had that natural tongue to speak Japanese, but it got hard when they introduced Chinese characters, which is a similarity. Yeah. You could argue where was the origin between the two, but that's what got me. In terms of the character recognition.
Okay. Yeah. It's always a tricky one. I still wish I could have spoken another language, but I have
stopping you now.
No, I'll tell you what's stopping me, and it's a weird reality, right? So I've always thought about learning, any of those the infamous languages, Italian, Spanish. Maybe not French, but some of the other languages that I think would interest me. Even something a bit more unique, maybe something from the Nordics, maybe something Baltic, South American. I don't know. A whole bunch of languages I've thought about. The problem I have is not about the effort to go learn it, but it's the guilt that I'll feel if I learn it before I go and learn the mother tongue of both my parents. Right, because both my parents, right, they both grew up speaking different languages. So my dad came from the south of India, so he speaks Malayalam, and my mum comes from the north of India, where she speaks Hindi, and also there's a Goan tongue, which is Konkani. And so they never spoke it in the house purely because it was always English. So I never picked up and learned the language. So I thought if there's ever going to be a language I need to learn first, it's the one that's most relevant, the one that will be important to my heritage. But I was like, I'm never going to use it. I'm not interested in it. And so I go, all right, maybe I'll learn another one. And then I just keep thinking, yeah, but if I'm going to put in the effort, I really want to learn. And so I'm in this weird inner conflict to learn any language right now, which was kind of weird. But
you just need a catalyst where you're going to have to live in India, for example, for a year.
Exactly. Honestly, if I had to go live in India, I think I would learn, because my girlfriend now is Sri Lankan. And so we had considered going on a trip to Sri Lanka. And so I thought, perfect, I'll try and pick up some Sinhalese. And so maybe I can speak it while I was over there. We're not doing the trip for obviously the clear reasons that are going on at the moment politically. And so I just said, no, obviously I won't learn it now, but you're right. You just need a catalyst to make you learn it. And so, but they are tricky languages. But you're right. I kind of like you though. I don't think I'd have a fear of mistakes. It'd be more, for me, it's
knowing you, Phil, I don't think that would phase you at all.
Yeah, not really. But it'd be the motivation. It'd be like, well,
it'd be funny. You probably just laugh at it. You laugh at it. Yeah.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. But it'd be more about the I'd need a reason. I'd need a reason to go learn it so I could actually speak it. Otherwise, I'm like, well, what's the point? Why learn? But I do envy. I think my cousins speak. I think like, what is it? German, English, Spanish. There's I think they've got a few languages under their belts. It's always fascinating watching.
You're comparing, Phil. You're comparing.
Oh, that wasn't a comparison. I just think it's great. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll pick up a language.
But yeah, getting back to the whole challenges growing up. Let's be honest. We're not early 20s anymore.
Yeah.
So naturally, there's prioritization is needed.
Yeah. Do you have the time to sit there and learn and read and practice and all of that? You got other things going on.
Nowadays, my daughter, who's 6 weeks old, I do the nighttime midnight shift.
The what, sir?
The nighttime midnight shift. My wife and son go to bed about 9:30. It's game on for me, right? Once it hits 9, right?
Yeah.
But the beauty, obviously, if it's a lucky night and my daughter goes to sleep in my arms,
yeah,
that's when I do my own thing.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna go to you, Phil. I'm busy. I'm too busy, by the way.
Yeah.
You probably realize that when you and I were trying to arrange a time to speak, I'm like, Phil, Tuesday or Thursday, 4:30 p.m. I knew exactly when I was going to be free, right?
Yeah.
And I think in the whole prioritization thing, and maybe I'm opening up another stream of this conversation, you can always make time, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. You make it work. You know what's important. You'll make time for the things that are important. I 100% agree with you. And honestly, I always felt like that was a fear of mine, stepping into that next part of your life, which may involve getting married, settling down, having kids, whatever. I felt that the trade-off is I'm giving up all the fun things that, I do now and all the flexibility that I have now. And I actually don't think that's the case. I think if you really enjoy hanging out with friends, you'll still hang out with friends. If you really enjoy, like I thoroughly enjoy watching basketball, I'm still going to watch basketball. So it's that, you're right. I think you'll find time for the right things. And knowing
but inevitably, there's always going to be a trade-off.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. But you know what things you're trading off, right? Like, what things now you're prepared and willing. Like, I'm more than happy to give up going out every night if I wanted to have a family. That's okay. I'm totally okay with that. But it's about the time that you do have available to then saying, all right, well, where do I want to spend this time? What do I want to focus on? Well, here are the most important things I have outside my family, and that's how you pick what you do. So I suppose it all sort of like poetically falls into place once you start the process. But look, it's always nice to hear how people are going, how they're handling it themselves.
And I think one of the biggest things I did this year, Phil, and it's another reason why you're on a guest, and which I'm very thankful for. When I was growing up, I was one of those people who believed life was very much a zero-sum game.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know, whether it came from my dad or whatever, you know, there's no right or wrong. It is what it is.
Mm.
And this year, I really turned it around and believed that why don't we just make the pie bigger? You know, if you get a bigger slice, I get a bigger slice, everyone gets a bigger slice. It's literally win-win. You're a sales profession, Phil, and I'm pretty sure that when you try to close a deal, it's very much it needs to be a win-win situation. So how can we apply that to life? So, hey, Phil, I'm doing this podcast XYZ. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And our conversation is very much no different, you know, back in 2016, 2017. Isn't that amazing?
How many years ago was it? 2016? Yeah. Dang, that's quite, yeah, I think you're right. 2015, 2016, something like that.
How cool is that, Phil? We can just pick things up just like that. But
oh, man.
It takes two to tango, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. But that's what I was saying. I think you're lucky enough to come across a few people like this, right? And so obviously I consider myself blessed. I've got great friends around me. You know, I meet people like yourselves throughout the course of my life, and I've got plenty of friends that I've met all around the world that are just like that. But it is a rarity, and when it comes up, I think it's absolutely so important to capitalize on that opportunity. You know, to talk to those people, to learn from them, to experience with them, to kind of continue down your journey. You know, and get them involved. If they're good influences, if they're good to have around, they're supportive, then that's all that really matters.
If I can help you in any way, Phil, I'm more than happy to.
Oh, I know that.
But here's the thing, right? I also realized that there's no expectations. If I help you, Phil, I don't expect anything in return as well.
Yeah.
Because the fact that you achieved something and it made you successful is a bigger enough of a return for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I also realized that recently. If you were to do someone for someone, don't do it expecting something in return. You need to genuinely give it.
Yeah. What do you think allowed you to realize that? You said it was only recently. What do you think were the series of events that led you to realizing, actually, hey, this is probably the right way I should be, approaching supporting other people?
Honestly, I didn't know. It was more trial and error. It was more just giving it a crack. I decided to just try something different this year. This was before the podcast, by the way. So I wasn't driven by the fact that I need to reach out to everyone so that I can then inevitably in 2 months' time get them onto the show.
Yeah.
This podcast came to light on my birthday on January 21st. I started this whole abundance thing of making the pie bigger on the 1st of January. So I think this podcast is very much a manifestation of that. Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. By the way, I forgot that our birthdays are 2 days apart. Yeah. No, that's good. And like, these are the kinds of things you should probably spend your time on anyways, and I say that I don't want to sort of take away from the weight of what it is that you're actually doing, but when you find something that allows you to manifest those kinds of ambitions, like, creating a bigger slice for everyone, that's what that's where I think you'll get the most satisfaction spending your time doing. Because like I said to you, it was like the first call that we had after you had said, hey, do you want to get on the podcast? I said, this is such an awesome idea. I've always thought about doing something like this, right? But like, you're actually doing it, and that's awesome, man. Like, it's good to see, and frankly, I'm hoping that I might give you a return guest, maybe a few episodes down the track when you've got a whole series of.
I've got a backlog now, Phil. It's a good problem to have.
What's that?
I've got a backlog now of recorded podcasts in my folder that I need to edit and upload.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that'll keep you busy. That's good.
But getting back,
the little one goes to sleep.
Hey, getting back to your point about perfection.
Yeah.
I didn't aim for perfection. I just did it. I went for good enough. And here we are, episode. You're probably number 20 now, actually. But I just released episode 12.
Oh, this is episode 20 and you just released 12. Yeah, right. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, rather than it was, I mean, absolutely correct. You didn't have perfection. You were doing the thing that gave you satisfaction, that gave you the contentment. You got to talk to people that you enjoy talking to. And like, it doesn't even matter that it's on a podcast or not.
No.
It was the fact that you're doing something that goes beyond that strive for perfection. It was, this is what I feel, is right. It gives me happiness. It gives me joy. It's something that I love doing, and you're doing it, right? So like, that is the single greatest thing, I reckon.
It's a beautiful thing, Phil. And like what I said to you, tomorrow, I don't know, but you know what? That's tomorrow's sort of contemplation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phil, it's not surprising that we've spoken for more than an hour. Not surprising.
We're done already? Dang, okay.
Don't mind me. It's more. I know that you and I can go on and on and on. It's more in a sense
part one.
It's more in a sense that I do know, like, as with life, as with attention spans, as with priority, anything above 1.5, people just zone out, each to their own, right? But before we finish, Phil, let's park the blueprint of life to the side. Let's park friendships. Let's park languages. We've gone everywhere, Phil.
Yeah. There's a big question coming up. I can feel it.
No. It's a pretty simple one. I like asking this question. I'll ask the question because every time I ask this question, everyone just comes up with a very different response.
Okay, here we go.
2 days ago, I had a conversation with an economist. She gave me a fantastic answer. So, in 30 years' time, Phil, where do you see yourself? Now, paint a picture for me.
Oh, that's good. Well, setting up that answer.
Be as very vivid as you can.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, setting up that answer with the fact that an economist just gave you the perfect answer. I'll aim to strive for something maybe just beneath that.
But you don't know you don't know what her answer is, right? So that shouldn't anchor you, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it struggles because I have an economics degree, so I'm kind of like, well, maybe I'm the second best economist to give you an answer. No, I'm kidding. So look, 30 years. Where does that put me? That puts me at the sweet age of 59. Man, so I'll tell you this, right? So this is something that I think I've always taken from the approach to life that I think my parents took, and this is probably the route that I'll take. From the many conversations that I've had with my parents, one of their ambitions was always, their ambition was always to move to Australia, this land of opportunity, start a family, get a good profession, put us, or give us our own feet to stand on, myself, my sister, and then they would go and retreat out to the Central Coast near the water, and they can live out their days, by the beach, going fishing, and that was what they wanted to do. And they did that, right? That was exactly what they did. Now, where I live and what I'm doing may be still up in the air, but I think it's very much the same idea, right? So
nice.
Start a family, settle down, build a life around, some sort of community, whether that's my current friends, whether that's, whoever I'm around, wherever we decide to plant roots. But then also, I think still taking the same approach to my day to day, doing the things that make me happy, feeling as stress-free as I do. That may not be as a practical answer. I don't want to give you like, I'll be in a 3-story house with a nice car, which, by the way, I'm very, very proud of the fact that I finally bought my dream car. I told you about this a little while ago.
Just say it. What is it? What is it again, Phil?
Oh, Toyota Camry for sure. No. But my point to that is, I think for me, when I think about where I'm going to be in years ahead, it's not necessarily about the practicality of where we'll physically be or anything like that. It's more about where am I going to be in here, right? Where am I going to be in here? And I think it's all about the same approach that we're taking now. I hope that in 30 years, I'm thinking the exact same way that I'm thinking right now, as clearly as I think now, and as comfortably as I operate now. That's how I hope to feel. Now, physically, I can already feel my body starting to break down just a little bit, but no, I hope that I'm operating the exact same way that I am now, alongside all those the other things that we've just talked
It's
about
also
as
a
well.
pretty good answer, Phil.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm hoping on your board of economists to give you an answer for that question. I'm like ranked number 2, but
She's
yeah, I'm curious.
Her response is probably number 1.
Yeah,
it's pretty good, pretty powerful actually.
Yeah, don't tell me, because I want to hear it on the podcast when the recording comes out. So I would love to hear that in real time. But
it was pretty powerful.
I'm curious, and I'm wondering whether maybe someone else has asked you on a podcast already. But what's your answer for that? Where do you see yourself in 30 years?
Yeah. I covered my answer probably quite early on, but so your answer is very much a mental space, so to speak, where how you're feeling now is very much how you want to feel when you're 59, for example, right? For me, I'd love to see myself. I'd love to have no internet.
Dream.
It's switched off. I have a satellite phone, by the way.
Yeah. You want the one with the big satellite, you pull the antenna out.
Like the screen is probably like a finger size, right? Like there's no apps. It's just literally a number calls in.
It's a dumb phone. Yeah.
It's a dumb phone, right? It's not a smartphone. Yeah. So I'm on the east coast of Sardinia, Phil. There's this sort of rundown sort of shop overlooking the ocean. It's pretty simple, bare walls, a few tables. There's a kitchen at the back. I'm there. I'm cooking away. 2 hours prior, I was at the markets, at the local fish market. I basically purchased whatever's caught fresh from the day, from the local fishermen. I bring it back to the restaurant. It's probably about maybe, I don't know, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. My wife is probably asleep, knowing her. I would love for my wife to be with me, of course. Kids are naturally grown up. Hence, the only way they're going to contact me is with a satellite phone.
Yeah.
It's a small restaurant field, few tables. I'm in the back. I've turned the light on. The sun's about to rise, but it's still quite dark. I'm in the kitchen. I'm cooking. I'm preparing. I'm thinking about what I want to make. There's no menu, Phil, at my restaurant.
Yeah.
I don't think there's even the name of the place, Phil. I don't think it even is. You know?
Well, thankfully, you're an absolute whiz at coming up with slogans and captions. So I don't think a restaurant name is too much of a problem to think of.
So I'm preparing food, and it's approaching sort of 11 o'clock. My wife is naturally with me. She hates being front of house, so she's probably sitting on one of the tables on the corner away from everyone. It's a bit of an introvert. She's probably knitting away. Put the headphones on, listen to a podcast, meeting podcast, by the way.
Yeah, great. That's good.
And I flip the card, and it's open. Someone walks in, could be a tourist.
It's a beautiful scene you've painted there. You know, it's interesting. Only again, I don't know I won't even call it out. I don't even know the difference in our age. It's only going to be a few years. Had you asked the same question about 40 or 50 years, because I feel like at 59 I'd still be, kind of operating here. But I always said, and I've said this to many of my friends, that if I'm ever by myself at the end of my life, it will be slightly north of where you are, actually, in Genoa. Pretty much doing a very similar thing by the water. But that's an absolute pipe dream. But that is a very almost poetic, but a very nice visual that you've just created there. So
I like cooking, Phil. I love the creativity with it. I love the challenge of going to the market and just making something. I have never looked at a recipe. I just cook whatever I feel like. I watch Rick Stein.
Yeah.
I love watching cooking shows. When I got sick, Phil, all I ever did was watch cooking shows, because I realized I had to cook for myself to ensure I stayed healthy. It's funny how things sort of work out in life. So so that's where it is, Phil. That's me. That's me in 30 years' time. It's It's what's interesting, Phil, is that by me describing it to you, I'm already there.
Yeah. Well, that's where it starts. And then
I don't have to be there, by the way. I'm very content where I am now, Phil. And
yeah.
I know tomorrow changes, and tomorrow I could go crazy, whatever, you know what I mean? But you know what? That's tomorrow's problem, Phil.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my answer if someone were to flip the question back onto me.
Yeah. No, it's a good answer. I might even pitch that question elsewhere. I think it is a nice thing to explore. But it seems that we have an overlapping taste in Italy, and perhaps maybe that's an interesting topic to talk about when we kick this off again in part 2, part 3, whatever. We'll start to maybe talk about
something like. I haven't forgot that when I serve that dish to the guest and he or she finishes and they ask me where's the bill, I said there's no bill. Just pay me whatever.
Yeah. Pay me with love, with attention. I don't know. That's
I like to believe when it gets to a certain stage in life, it don't matter anymore, Phil.
Oh no! Honestly, I honestly
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, when you get to that point in your life, look, I feel like you'll knowing the approach that we take to our day to day. By that point in our life, given we haven't veered off path, we will have played our role, in all the lives that mattered. We will have done what I think we're meant to do, and then it's just about living out your days, doing exactly what you want. And like I was saying, like we both said now, I think a few times now, is like we're lucky enough to be thinking like that now. We're lucky enough to have had the people around us to give us that perception, to make us think like that. And it puts us in good stead to manifest that dream in 30 years, more so than perhaps if we hadn't been in this position now.
And keep in mind, mate, I didn't mention anything about my kids, by the way.
Oh, you did? You said they'd be all grown up and they'd know how to contact you.
More in a sense of, I'm when the time comes, Phil, because I know family to you is very important now, right? Like the greatest joy is when you be with your wife, she gives birth, and 9 times out of 10, you're the one who actually holds the baby first because her adrenaline is up and whatnot. And most of the times the dad, or in my case, in 2 instances with my son and my daughter, I was the one who held them first. And the fact that they got out, I knew that I was really proud of them already.
Yeah.
And whatever they do now is just a bonus.
Yeah. I can see the true emotion in the way in which you just described that. So
it's a lovely emotion, Phil. And I'll say it again. If you ever need me or for whatever, you know who to call, right? Now, any sort of last words, Phil?
Last words. You should ask that with less sincerity, because I feel like it's been we're not on our deathbeds just yet. No, we're not on our deathbeds just yet. No, look.
No. We're embracing life, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're embracing life.
Look, I got nothing, man. We'll talk like this for hours on end if we really wanted to. And I'm sure if you ever, I know you got a backlog now, but if you ever need content, I'm like one phone call away. We'll do this again anytime. So no, it's been good. It's been good to be on the show. Is it technically called a show? I think it's a show, right?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I basically get a Zoom. I get you to come on time. We have a conversation. It's not that hard.
Yeah, it's definitely not a meeting. We'll go with this. It was lovely to have a great conversation with you, Jeff, and I'm keen to hear I'm keen to hear which economist taught me in that answer, but I'll wait for that episode.
Yeah, it's part of the sales mind.
It's in here now. yeah.
It's just trying to hook you, right? Gotta get Phil to follow. Gotta get Phil to subscribe.
Yeah, I'm gonna mark it on the calendar, episode 13 or whatever it was. So,
but give you a bit of a sneak peek. When I do introduce him or her, I'm actually not going to reveal his or her face.
Oh, dang it. Okay. All right.
Hopefully that works to just get people to get a bit more excited.
Yeah. Oh, so you'll do like an intro without saying who the person is. Is that the idea?
Well, normally on a Tuesdays, I show a preview of what's going to happen on the Thursday.
Yeah.
But on the Tuesday, when it comes to me promoting that Thursday upload, I'm not going to show a picture of who that person is.
Oh, those were the shorter snippets that you were posting. Gotcha. Yeah.
So basically, I'm basically going to black out this person's face, so you wouldn't know who he or she was. But I won't say too much.
That's all right. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure we get.
But Phil, first and foremost, thank you for your time.
Thank you
for responding to me for quite some time now. It did seem when we first chatted, I was like, it was very much a concept. Now I realize that it's not a concept anymore. It's actually come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
My pleasure, Phil. So Phil, enjoy your night. Say hi to your girlfriend for me. It's been a pleasure, Phil. Have a good night.
We'll speak soon. All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.